26 and still untouched, the beloved daughter of a dignified mogul catches the heart of a known playboy millionaire who's about to fall harder than he ever thought possible. Welcome, my beautiful viewers, to a moment that might just change how you feel about love. I'm James Hope, your narrator, and I'm grateful you're here. How are you doing today, truly? Let me know in the comments below. I love hearing where our incredible story family is joining us from. Before we dive in, I have one small but important request. Stay with me till the final moment. Don't skip, don't rush, because this isn't just any tale. It's one that stirs the heart, shakes the soul, and might just transform how you see the meaning of love. So take a breath, lean back, and come with me. Here begins a story like no other. Megan, radiant like morning sun and graceful as a whispered prayer, stood beneath the majestic chandeliers of the ballroom her father had spared no expense to reserve. The shimmering folds of her form-hugging golden gown shimmered with every delicate step, her polished brown skin aglow under the light. Her hair, intricately braided and falling like a crown down her back, drew every eye the moment she emerged, an ethereal goddess cloaked in gold and grace. Her presence didn't ask for attention. It owned it. And as she scanned the dazzling crowd with wide, gentle eyes, there was something hauntingly untouched in her innocence. Something that told the world she had walked through life, protected, preserved, pure. Music played like soft velvet behind her, and laughter rang out from corners of power and privilege. But Megan floated through it all, like a vision too refined to belong to the noise. She moved with the kind of poise that made time slow, untouched by scandal, unscarred by the world's shadows. A beacon of grace molded from the love of a mother gone too soon and a father who'd raised her like a prayer. Mitchell, standing at the entrance in a sleek suit, watched her now with equal pride and pain. She was his only daughter, the living echo of a woman he had loved more than life, and everything he had poured into keeping her safe, unspoiled by the false love and fickle men of their world. Tonight he had gone all out, not for show, but for her. The chandeliers flown in from Paris, the violins from Vienna, flowers from islands that sounded more myth than real. It was all to declare one truth. Megan was not only his daughter, she was his legacy, his jewel, his vow. She was to be protected, cherished, and admired for who she was, not desired for what she looked like. Among the sea of powerful guests and poised politicians, one man stood apart. Dressed in a sleek suit and darker reputation, he was known only as Mr. Hope, a name spoken in social circles like a cautionary tale. Powerful, dangerous, captivating. He was the kind of man who seduced hearts and closed deals without flinching. Women wanted him, men envied him, but he belonged to no one and wanted for nothing. Until now. Until she entered. And just like that, Megan's golden figure stole the air from his lungs. The world tilted. Her innocence was a blow he hadn't expected, knocking him off balance not with lust, but with reverence. Suddenly, the man who had never lingered long enough to remember a name felt transfixed by someone who hadn't even looked at him. His desire didn't burn, it bowed. For the first time, he didn't want to conquer. He wanted to be worthy. And as she moved closer, pausing to thank guests with that soft smile and natural grace, Mr. Hope forgot every practiced line he had ever used. Her perfume, jasmine and vanilla, wrapped around him like a spell. He stepped forward without thinking, fate clearing a path between them. Megan sensed it, someone approaching. She turned, eyes lifting, calm and curious. And in that moment, everything inside him fell apart. She looked at him not with judgment, not with fear, but with a gentle innocence that pierced right through every layer he'd ever built. He stood there breathless, unable to speak, until a firm hand landed on his shoulder. Mr. Hope turned, only to find Mitchell standing before him. Tall, imposing, unmoved. His voice was calm, but every word was sharp. "You're not worthy." It wasn't loud, but it echoed louder than thunder. Between the three of them, father, daughter, stranger, a storm began. "She's innocent, untouched." Mitchell didn't need to say more. The message was crystal. And Mr. Hope, he didn't run, not out of arrogance, but because, deep down, Something inside him had already been reborn. He looked at Megan and saw not a trophy, but a transformation, a reason to become someone new. The night ended, the last guest gone, the ballroom dimmed, but Mr. Hope stood on his balcony, staring out at the city, haunted not by regret, but by her eyes, her scent, her softness, her father's words. He had lived a life of indulgence and emptiness, but tonight awakened something ancient, something real. For the first time, he wanted to be more than charming. He wanted to be true, and not for reputation, not for show, for love, for her. Megan had changed him without even trying, and that night he made a vow to himself, to become a man worthy of standing in her light. Since that golden evening, Megan had become more than a memory. She was a constant pulse in his every thought. Her gaze lingered in his mind, her scent danced in his dreams. Every other woman, every thrill felt dim by comparison. He wasn't just obsessed, he was reformed, not out of guilt, but out of awe. He wanted to be near her again, not to take, not to touch, but simply to be allowed close, close enough to breathe in her presence again. So instead of nightclubs and champagne, Mr. Hope spent his evenings alone, quietly remembering the way she blinked, the way she smiled, the way her world felt too good for his. Rumors flew. The media took notice. "Where is the infamous bachelor?" Headlines screamed. "Has Mr. Hope disappeared into scandal or secrecy?" But the truth was quieter, softer. He wasn't hiding. He was healing, watching her from afar, learning her routines, her passions, her purity. She worked with orphans, she curated galleries, she visited her father in the countryside on weekends. She listened to symphonies and smiled at strangers. Every detail deepened the ache in his soul. Because she wasn't just beautiful, she was good. The kind of good that made him question every past decision, every past self. He no longer wanted to be near her. He wanted to deserve her. So, one crisp morning, dressed not to impress but to confess, Mr. Hope arrived at Mitchell's estate. He held no flowers, no gifts, only sincerity. When Mitchell opened the door, his eyes narrowed, his guard unchanged. But Mr. Hope didn't falter. He bowed his head, voice steady but vulnerable. "I want to marry her." Silence fell, cold, long, deep, until Mitchell finally scoffed. Not because he didn't believe the words, but because he'd heard them before from men who didn't mean them. "You've changed from a single glance?" Mr. Hope didn't argue, didn't charm. He simply replied, "Not yet, but I will. I have to. She's worth it." And something in that reply made Mitchell pause, not soften, but consider. This wasn't manipulation. It was conviction. So he stepped back, eyes assessing, and said the only words that mattered. "If you want her, prove you're worthy." And just like that, a silent pact was forged, not between two men, but between love and transformation. From that moment on, Mr. Hope wasn't chasing a girl, he was chasing grace, and that journey had just begun. Away. He met Mitchell's gaze head-on, not with arrogance, not with the bravado of the man he used to be, but with the steady, grounded stillness of someone who knew what he wanted and was finally ready to fight for it with integrity. "I understand," Hope said quietly, the weight of those 3 words anchoring him in the moment. "And you have every right to protect her. She deserves that. She deserves everything." There was no defense in his tone, no attempt to soften the blow or appeal to sentiment, just truth. And for a long moment, Mitchell said nothing, only watched, perhaps waiting for a crack, a reveal, some telltale sign of weakness masquerading as sincerity. But there was none. "I've made mistakes," Hope continued, "more than I can count. And I don't expect you to forget them, or even forgive them. But I'm not here for her because of guilt. I'm here because, for the first time in my life, I'm not chasing something to fill a void. I'm standing still, because I've finally found what feels right." Mitchell's brow furrowed slightly, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his expression. He leaned forward, voice lower now but laced with challenge. "Do you love her?" Hope didn't hesitate. I'm learning how. The kind she deserves, without control, without expectation. I think that's what love is, and I'm willing to spend the rest of my life proving it. Mitchell's jaw tightened, but there was no rebuttal, only a long, pensive silence, as if the weight of generations of protection, pride, and fear was pressing against the truth that maybe, just maybe, this man was no longer the boy who once lived for applause. Finally, Mitchell stood. I won't stop watching, he said simply. I won't stop weighing every step you take. I'd expect nothing less, Hope replied. And with that, Mitchell left the room, not with approval, not with trust, but with the smallest, most imperceptible shift of possibility. A door not opened, but no longer locked. Hope remained seated for a long while after, heart steady but soul trembling, because he knew that meeting hadn't been a confrontation. It had been a rite of passage, the kind only a man who truly loved could endure without crumbling. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual rhythm, unaware that somewhere in a quiet club on a quiet morning, a man had stood at the threshold of transformation and had not turned away. Megan's breath caught, her eyes filled wide and glistening as she reached for the locket with trembling fingers, brushing the edge of the silver with a kind of awe that made Hope's chest ache. You remembered, she whispered, the words barely there, like breath against glass. I more than remembered, he said softly. I wanted to carry her with us, in something that stays close to your heart, just like she stays close to yours. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was saturated, with meaning, with the weight of 1,000 unspoken things. The wind rustled through the leaves, the fairy lights swayed gently above them, and Megan, so composed, so often carefully still, suddenly rose from her chair. She stepped toward him, her hand still holding the locket, but her gaze fixed entirely on his face. I was afraid, she said quietly, of what you used to be, of what people would say, of what I would feel. But this, all of this, tonight, the gala, the way you've changed, it's not about who you were. It's about who you're becoming. And I see that now. I believe it. Hope didn't move, afraid that even blinking might shatter the fragile miracle unfolding in front of him. And then, slowly, she placed the locket around her neck, letting it fall just below her collarbone, a quiet symbol of trust, of memory, of something sacred passing between them. She looked up at him again, closer now, and in the dim shimmer of lantern light, she reached for his hand. Come walk with me, she murmured. So they did, past the table, down the path, under the rose-draped trellis, until the sounds of the city felt 1,000 miles away. They stopped beneath the bough of an old olive tree, its roots gnarled and grounding, and there Megan turned to him once more. I don't know what this is yet, she admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability, but I want to find out, not for what you give, but for who you are and who I might become with you. And in that moment, Hope didn't try to kiss her. He didn't rush the moment. He simply stepped forward and brought her hand to his heart, holding it there, letting the rhythm speak for him. It wasn't the beginning of a fairy tale. It was the continuation of something rarer, real, earned, sacred. Hope placed his palm up on the table between them, his voice low and steady. I won't rush you. I'll wait for your heart. There was something so pure, so unguarded in that sentence, that Megan found herself placing her hand in his without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined, not out of romance, but out of trust. She didn't say anything for a long time, but the silence between them was filled with warmth. As the night deepened and the lanterns above swayed in the breeze, casting golden flickers across her skin, Megan realized something. What scared her wasn't heartbreak, it was the possibility that this might be real, that Hope wasn't who the world once believed him to be, but someone far gentler, someone whose brokenness didn't frighten her, but quietly mirrored her own. Later that evening, when she returned home, she sat in her room holding the locket. Her heart swelled and ached all at once. When her father knocked gently and stepped inside, noticing the emotion in her eyes, he asked softly, "Was it a good night?" She looked up at him, her gaze full of questions and wonder. He's not what they say, not anymore. Mitchell, always the protector, always the skeptic, didn't smile. He didn't relax completely, but he saw the way she clutched the locket, like something sacred, and gave a slow, measured nod. True love takes time, he said firmly. Don't forget that. Megan nodded, her eyes drifting to the window, where moonlight spilled like silver paint. And in the quiet garden outside, Hope remained a while longer, seated at the table where her warmth still lingered. His fingers brushed the tablecloth where her hand had rested. Though he hadn't kissed her, had made no declarations, he closed his eyes and whispered a silent promise to the stars. He would wait. He would earn her heart, not with grand gestures, but with patience and devotion. Because now more than ever, he knew. Love was not a conquest. It was a slow unfolding, a garden blooming in silence, and he was willing to tend it forever. The wind was soft that morning, brushing against Megan's golden-braided hair as she stood on the balcony overlooking her father's estate. Her fingers curled around a steaming mug, her gaze lost somewhere between the horizon and yesterday's tenderness. Her heart, once protected by thick walls of innocence and caution, beat just a little differently now, because hope had started filling places she never thought could be touched. But as the day grew, so did the storm, not of thunder or rain, but of whispers, shadows from the past trying to invade the gentle dawn of something new. Newspapers, gossip sites, social media, all exploded with headlines, scandalous reminders of the man Hope used to be. The wild parties, the fleeting companions, the tabloid king now reborn as a miracle transformation. Not everyone believed it. Megan's phone buzzed with anonymous messages, screenshots, old articles, photos she never wanted to see, faces of women with heavy makeup and smug smiles claiming they knew him better than anyone ever could. Some messages were jealous, others venomous, all aimed to fracture the fragile trust blooming in Megan's heart. She sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through the chaos with trembling hands. Her heart twisted with every word, not because she believed them, but because she feared she might. She didn't want to become the story of another innocent girl falling for a charming liar. Clutching the locket with her mother's name, she took a deep breath. Truth had to be found face to face. When Hope opened the door that afternoon, the sunlight framed him like redemption. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Not accusation. She didn't come to fight. I need to know, she whispered, her voice breaking. Hope's heart sank, not from guilt, but from the weight of how fragile her heart had become. He couldn't erase the past. He could only own it. Sitting beside her, he took her hand and spoke quietly. I was lost. I lived through 100 empty nights, but none of them had your light. You're not part of my past, Megan. You're the reason I walked away from it. You're my only truth now. She searched his eyes, those dark pools that once burned with desire, now shimmering with something deeper. Not hunger, not conquest, but calm, stillness, home. And yet doubt lingered, not because she didn't want to believe him, but because love, real love, demands trust, and trust must be earned. Meanwhile, Mitchell, ever the guardian, sensed the storm and acted. Quiet inquiries, discreet calls. Using his influence, he uncovered the truth, a calculated effort by women from Hope's past, scorned, jealous, bitter. Some were hurt by his silence, others by the knowledge they had been fleeting pleasures to a man now offering someone else his forever. Reviewing records late into the night, phone logs, travel reports, even surveillance, Mitchell saw the truth. Hope had cut ties completely. No lies, no contact, no indulgences. Satisfied, though still cautious, Mitchell called Megan the next morning, told her everything, then gently asked, "What do you want to do?" She didn't answer right away. Her heart was louder than his words. She needed time, not from Hope, but from her own fears. Hope didn't call, didn't text, didn't beg. Instead, he waited. He wrote, not emails or memos, but letters, handwritten, folded and sealed, tucked into a wooden box beside his bed. Letters full of regret, hope, dreams, fear, and above all, love. Days passed. Then one night, under a sky full of blinking stars, Megan broke her silence. Not with words, but a photo. A 7-year-old girl in her mother's lap, both smiling under the same tree that still stood in their garden. No caption, no explanation. But Hope knew. It meant trust. It meant her heart was opening again. It meant, I'm letting you in. He stared at the photo, eyes blurring, whispered into the night, she's everything now. And from that moment on, he vowed to protect that trust more fiercely than anything he'd ever guarded before. Megan had always been composed, graceful under pressure. But in recent weeks, the exhaustion of carrying too much, emotion, responsibility, uncertainty, had taken its toll. Her glow faded, her spirit dimmed. She brushed it off. Fatigue, she said, nothing more. Until her body gave out. Confined to bed, weak and listless, her voice barely a whisper. And when word reached Hope, he left a board meeting mid-sentence, ignoring protocol, rushing straight to her side. Not with panic, but with desperate love. He found her curled under blankets, fevered, uneasy. He kissed her forehead, not out of habit, but out of need. Read her poetry aloud, fed her soup with quiet care, held her hand until she drifted into sleep. When she stirred at dawn and saw him slouched beside her, suit wrinkled, eyes shadowed from a sleepless night, her heart trembled. Thank you, she murmured, her voice like air, for being here. He blinked awake, groggy but smiling. For you, always. She rested her head on his shoulder, and in that silence, love quietly took root. Not loud, not flashy, but real. Soon they shared more moments. Slow walks in the garden, laughter returning with butterflies, quiet evenings with books, hands brushing in the kitchen. No need for grand gestures, just presence. Even Mitchell noticed the peace on Megan's face, the way her soul seemed to exhale around Hope. And though he said little, he nodded to himself when no one watched, because even he had seen the transformation. Hope's love had shifted from obsession to devotion. And one evening, under a sky filled with stars and lanterns, he led Megan to the garden where they had first connected. The air was cool, roses in bloom, twinkling lights overhead. He stopped, took her hands in his and said, Megan, I've worn many faces, walked through many lives, but the moment I met you, everything changed. You showed me what love is, what it means to give without expecting anything back. You've made me a better man, and I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Her eyes filled with tears, not of doubt, of belief. Then he pulled out a small box, rose gold, gleaming in the moonlight. Inside a delicate ring, simple, elegant, eternal. He knelt before her, not to impress her, but to honor her. And just before she could speak, her heart whispered the answer her lips already knew. His words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of a vow, tender yet unshakable, like a sacred promise whispered into eternity. Megan stood frozen, the reality of his proposal crashing over her like a wave. Her heart pounded against her ribs, breath catching as love surged through her with almost unbearable intensity. A single tear slid down her cheek, and with a trembling nod she whispered, Yes, yes, I will. Hope's face lit up with quiet, radiant joy. He gently took her hand, kissed it, his eyes locked on hers as he slid the ring onto her finger, perfect in size and meaning. There was no rush, no noise, just the soft hush of a garden night and the sacred stillness between two souls promising forever. The ring wasn't just jewelry. It was a vow in itself, a solemn oath he would never break. You've made me the happiest man alive, he murmured, his lips brushing her skin. Still reeling from the moment's gravity, Megan gazed at him, her heart aching in the most beautiful way. She had never felt so known, so wholly cherished. Hope wasn't just the man she loved. He had become the man she had prayed for, a man transformed by love, a man ready to walk beside her through every high and every heartbreak. As the stars blinked above them and the garden held its breath, Megan knew this was only the beginning. Their journey, built on trust and forgiveness, was just getting started. The world didn't yet know about their engagement, but in that quiet, timeless corner of the earth, under the glow of fairy lights and night-blooming roses, nothing else mattered. Just him, just her, just love. Hope stood, pulling her into his arms with quiet reverence. I promise you, Megan, he said, voice low and sure, I will protect you better than I ever have. You're my heart, my everything, and I'll never let go. She laid her cheek against his chest, the steady rhythm of his heart anchoring her. This, this was home. Not a place, but a person. Her person. When their wedding day came, it unfolded like a living dream. The garden shimmered under a sky painted in hues of amber and lavender, as if the heavens themselves had paused to witness the sealing of their love. Arches of white roses framed the aisle, and fairy lights hung like constellations brought down to earth. Megan stood at the aisle's edge, radiant in a gown that seemed to flow like moonlight, her veil sparkling like dew, her heart trembling, not with nerves but with overwhelming joy. The music swelled, a soft, soulful melody. And every guest rose, but Hope, standing beneath the golden arch, barely breathed. She was his Megan, the woman who had healed pieces of him he hadn't even known were broken. Tonight, she was not just beautiful, she was divine. Mitchell, her father, walked her slowly down the aisle, his grip tender but tight. Like letting go meant handing over part of his soul. As he reached Hope, he placed her hand in his with a trembling breath and whispered, "Take care of my little girl." And Hope nodded. He didn't need to speak. The ceremony was not grand or rehearsed. It was raw, intimate, and true. His voice cracked when he said, "You are my light, Megan, my hope, my forever." And she, barely holding back tears, whispered, "I vow to love you in silence, in storms, in every breath of this life." When the officiant declared them husband and wife, the garden erupted in joy. But all they could hear was the whisper of her gown and the quiet breath they shared before that first kiss. Soft, reverent, full of awe. Not a kiss of passion, but of sacred beginning. Later that night, long after the laughter faded and the last piece of cake was served, they entered their private suite. The room glowed with candlelight, petals scattered like blessings on the floor. Hope closed the door gently behind them, and Megan stood breathless, her hands clasped before her, her heart fluttering like butterfly wings. He approached her slowly, reverently, seeking her eyes before reaching out. At her soft nod, he lifted her veil with the care of a man touching something priceless. Then his fingers found the delicate buttons of her gown, undoing them one by one, not rushed, but as if each motion whispered, "I honor you." She let him undress her, not just from the gown, but from years of fear and hesitation. In her bridal lingerie, she stood vulnerable, radiant. Her voice trembled. "Hope, I'm still a—" Her voice faltered. She looked down, uncertain. But he lifted her chin gently, their eyes meeting again, and he whispered, "Then tonight is sacred. This isn't about passion, it's about love." And he held her, not to claim her, but to shelter her. His kisses were blessings. Forehead, eyes, cheek, lips. Slow, intentional. Each one a vow. And when they finally gave themselves to each other, it was not in hunger, but in reverence. The world faded as they moved together, not two bodies but one soul, joined by trust, tenderness, and something timeless. Later, wrapped in his arms, the flickering candlelight painting gold across their skin, Megan rested her head on his chest and listened to his heartbeat. It belonged to her now, just as hers did to him. The silence around them wasn't empty. It was peace. Morning arrived like a whispered secret. Sunlight spilled across the silk sheets, the ocean breeze drifting through the open balcony doors. Megan stirred, her cheek on Hope's chest, his heartbeat echoing softly beneath her skin. He was already awake, eyes tracing her face with quiet awe, fingers threading through her hair. "You're my home, Megan," he whispered, voice husky with sleep. "Waking up beside you will always feel like a miracle." She smiled, her fingers brushing his collarbone. "Good morning, my husband," she whispered, the words sacred on her lips. It hit him with such beauty, his breath caught. He kissed her gently, then slipped out of bed, moving into the kitchen like a man reborn. He cracked eggs with soft precision, flipped pancakes barefoot, the golden sunlight gilding his skin. When Megan walked in, wrapped in his shirt, hair tousled and eyes still sleepy, he turned, took her left hand, and kissed the ring he'd placed there with trembling fingers just the night before. "This ring," he said softly, "is the best decision I've ever made." And she smiled, knowing in her heart that this was just the first page of the rest of their forever. From their back porch, sunsets became their private show. Megan wandered through the house, now their home, her eyes glistening with tears. Every room reflected her. Warm, earthy-toned walls, shelves lined with beloved classics and blank journals, the open kitchen adorned with hanging herb plants she'd always dreamed of. And then, the sunroom, flooded with golden light spilling onto polished wood floors, became her sacred space. It was there, surrounded by silence and sunbeams, that Megan began to write. Not for fame or fortune, but to capture every heartbeat, every quiet moment that had shaped their love. Hope, once the king of nightclubs and high-stakes deals, slowly turned his empire towards something deeper. He redirected his wealth into children's hospitals and women's shelters, stepping into boardrooms with a new mission, not to entertain, but to heal. Those who once knew him barely recognized the man he had become, but Megan saw him fully. She saw the tenderness when he held a child during a gala, the conviction when he spoke about redemption and second chances. And every time, her heart swelled with fierce, tearful pride. Mitchell, Megan's father, visited often. He would sit beside Hope on the porch, watching the waves roll in, sharing stories, trading knowing glances. Each time he saw his daughter's radiant smile, or caught the way Hope instinctively reached for her hand, he felt the peace of a father whose deepest prayer had been answered. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm, not perfect, but grounded in something unshakable. Their love no longer blazed with the urgency of new beginnings. Instead, it glowed with the steady warmth of something lasting. Hope told her every day, through notes slipped under her teacup or whispered promises as she drifted to sleep, "You're my everything." And Megan, in her way, showed him that love could be both fierce and tender, quiet and unyielding. Every night he drew her into his arms like it was their first, his hands spread gently across her back, his breath warm against her neck. She would sigh and anchor herself in the sanctuary of his embrace, the scent of him, the steady heartbeat she now called home. And even in sleep, their fingers stayed laced beneath the covers, their love a silent vow whispered between midnight and dawn. Then one ordinary morning changed everything. Sunlight poured amber across their bedroom. Megan, barefoot and trembling, stared at the test in her hand. One word. Positive. Just one word. And the world tilted. A breathless laugh escaped her lips, her heart pounding, her eyes misting. Her hand flew to her stomach, already loving what she could not yet see. Hope appeared in the doorway, freshly shaved and wearing the soft gray sweater she always stole. He paused, saw her face, saw the test, and the world seemed to hold its breath. 2 strides, then he swept her into his arms, his laughter like sunlight breaking through clouds. He kissed her everywhere, her cheeks, her hair, her mouth, her hands, blessing every inch of the woman who had saved him and now had given him eternity. "We're having a baby, Megan," he whispered, voice cracking. "Oh God, we're going to be parents." She laughed into his shoulder, tears streaming. They swayed there, wrapped in awe. That night, Hope lit candles, cooked dinner himself, nearly burning the pasta, and danced with her barefoot in the living room. His hand rested gently over her belly, as if already speaking to the life within. "I love you, little one." When they called Mitchell, Megan whispered, "Dad, I'm pregnant." There was a beat of silence, then the sound of a grown man crying. "My little girl," he said through tears, "I always knew you'd bring something beautiful into this world." From that moment, Hope became a man on a mission, devouring parenting books, choosing names, researching prenatal diets. With his own hands, he transformed the spare room into a nursery. Walls painted soft butter yellow, stars glowing from the ceiling, the crib sanded smooth as silk. Every evening, as the sea turned rose and silver, he knelt beside her belly, telling stories, singing lullabies, whispering promises into ears not yet born. Megan, stroking his hair, would watch him, once a man guarded and cold, now crying over baby socks and ultrasound recordings. Almost a year later, on Megan's birthday, she stood on their porch in a flowing white dress, belly round and radiant. Hope appeared behind her, holding a tissue-wrapped gift. Inside, a leather-bound book, midnight blue, gold embossed, "The Woman Who Saved Me." On the first page, his handwriting told a story of how he fell in love. From their first meeting, to their vows, to the moment she whispered they were going to be a family. Her tears fell freely as he looked at her and said, voice thick, "You gave me everything, Megan. A heart, a home, a future." She threw her arms around him. "I'd do it all again." And just like that, it felt like falling in love all over again. The prologue giving way to the real story. The world, once skeptical of hope, began to speak of them differently. Not as a scandal, but a fairy tale, a modern miracle, a story of redemption and real love, the kind that grows brighter with every chapter. Megan, once a 26-year-old virgin bride, now stood crowned in the sacred glow of motherhood. And Hope, once lost in a cold world, became the man every little girl dreams of. Not a prince by title, but by tenderness, truth, and transformation. Their life wasn't perfect. No real love is. But it was built on something far stronger. Faith that endured, love that healed, and a God who carried them through every storm. And when their baby was born, the first cries echoed like a hymn through their home. Hope held the tiny miracle in trembling arms and whispered to the heavens, "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for saving me through her." As the years passed, their child grew. Eyes like her mother, soul full of light. Their home remained a sanctuary of joy and purpose, built on giving, humility, and gratitude. And their story, once whispered, became a testimony, proof that purity still matters, that redemption is real, and that even the most broken hearts can be restored. To everyone who followed their journey, who cried with them, hoped with them, believed with them, thank you. You didn't just read a story, you became part of a family. If Megan and Hope touched your heart, if you smiled, wept, or felt seen, I would love to hear from you. Share your favorite moment. Tell me what stayed with you. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support keeps these stories alive. Your one share, your one comment. It's not just a number. It's the spark that lights the next chapter. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for your time, your tears, your love. And as you go forward, I pray you carry this story not just as fiction, but as hope. That you remember Megan's quiet strength and Hope's stunning transformation. That you believe, truly, your own story isn't over. God can still bring beauty from ashes, love from loneliness, healing from heartbreak. So I close this love story in the name of the one who made it all possible. In the holy and precious name of Jesus Christ, may his grace cover you. May his love carry you, and may your story end in joy, in purpose, in passion, and in everlasting love. Amen. Now tell me in the comments, did this story touch your heart? What was your favorite part? Please don't forget to subscribe. I love each and every one of you.